A lot of progressives have been openly, including me, openly criticizing the OG, Bernie Sanders, who said, hold your nose, vote for Biden, and on day one, we'll fight him. That's what Bernie said. That's also what the squad said. However, and I'm not going to get into particulars, but I have sources attached to Bernie in Bernie world who have said it's quite the contrary, to the point of pathetic. So Bernie, as Biden, has backed away from a $15 minimum wage, backed away from a $2,000 checks, has now forgotten the phrase public option, continuing the fracking all over the country, using his Department of Homeland Security to terrorize Native American demonstrators in Minnesota the other day. Bernie's been kind of quiet. Bernie's been quiet on the fight against Biden. He's been, routinely tweeting and going on social media against Republican obstruction, but not particularly discussing or pushing back on Biden very plainly abandoning the few campaign promises that he made. I mean, $15 minimum wage was one of the only promises he made. $2,000 checks, it's on tape. Public option was what he was pushing with his propaganda on the Democratic debate stage. Calling Bernie radical and it's too much money, we're going to do a public option. That's off the table. Bernie really didn't push back when Biden preemptively surrendered, claiming, we can't put the $15 minimum wage into the COVID relief bill because the unelected Senate parliamentarian whose opinions are only advisory, not binding, said so. So naturally, the corporate media created a bizarre report about how much influence Bernie Sanders has on the Biden administration. I mean, I hope you don't have an empty stomach right now. Colin, if we could pull this up. Bernie Sanders has real influence. Vermont's longtime outsider has become a trusted voice in Biden's White House. A voice for what? Where to put the carpet? And listen, I love Bernie. I respect what he's done, but I'm not going to fray from calling him out. I mean, I'll read some of it. It's just propaganda beyond the pale. At first glance, they seem like an odd couple. Bernie Sanders, the progressive and quintessential outsider, and President Biden, moderate politician and political insider. And yet, the 79-year-old Vermont senator has become a key voice in the Biden administration, called upon, consulted, and indispensable in keeping the liberal Democratic flock in line. Oh, the flock. After 30 years in Congress and 2 presidential runs, it's a new experience. Quote, as somebody who wrote a book called Outsider in the House, yes, it is a strange experience to be having that kind of influence that we have now, Sanders told CNN. The Biden-Sanders connection is not a love story. It's more a marriage of convenience. But as Biden pushes an unprecedented progressive White House agenda, it's crucial. It's also personal. You see this framing, an unprecedented progressive White House agenda? What? What's unprecedented? The $1.9 trillion Band-Aid to an economic gunshot wound? That millions of people are about to be evicted at the end of the month and Biden and the Democrats aren't doing a goddamn thing about it? That the Democrats and Biden are cheering on people losing their unemployment despite people not at all being made whole yet from the damage this pandemic has done. And by the way, workers already reporting that they're being forced back to work in unsafe conditions, still with a pandemic going on. Yes, much reduced, but cases still out there. CNN and MSNBC have been framing this Biden sweeping overhaul, progressive legislation. All of this is bullshit, corporate neoliberalism theater. Let's get back to this story. We have a good relationship, Sanders told Borger. He wants to be a champion of working families, and I admire and respect that. Has somebody hacked Bernie's mind? He wants to be a champion of working families, and I admire that and respect that. As a result, Sanders has entered Biden's political tent. Quote, I could tell you that Bernie Sanders has real influence in the White House, senior Biden advisor Cedric Richmond told Borger. Senator Sanders is respected. That respect is mutual. Quote, one of the things that struck me about Joe Biden is a very strong sense of loyalty, which I like and respect. Quote, he's more conservative than I am, obviously, Bernie said. But on the other hand, he's not only a smart guy, he is a good politician who has a sense of where people are and what is possible. And I think he understands that at this particular moment in American history, where working families face so many problems, you've got to go big, not small. I can't really stomach any more of that. But what is amazing to me about this, and there was an accompanying CNN segment. I don't have it, the video, but it was more nauseating than the written article, actually, is, you could call Bernie whatever you want. Some call him a sellout, a coward, fraud, whatever. I've always called him incredibly naive. But you can't be this naive. He can't be this naive. If Bernie Sanders, and obviously, by the way, Biden's administration probably wanted to get this on CNN. They want to frame that Bernie is on board with Biden so they could try and, keep progressives or fool progressives into thinking, oh, well, Bernie likes what Joe Biden's doing. Bernie thinks it's super progressive. Bernie thinks he's a champion of the working class or whatever bullshit he just said. But at the end of the day, what happened when between Bernie Sanders saying, we're going to fight him on day one. Let's get rid of Trump. We're going to fight him on day one. And he's a champion of the working class and I have influence on him. Well, if you have influence on him, you got pretty weak influence because he's abandoned the $15 minimum wage. He doesn't discuss the public option whatsoever. He wants to give police more money as they're executing black men all the time. In his infrastructure deal that he's waxing poetic to get Republican support, he's taking out some of the climate catastrophe policies that would have been in there and lowering the overall price. To really do something, you need to spend $7 to $10 trillion. He's now talking about spending less than $2 trillion. So I don't know, maybe they have dinner together. Maybe they have good conversation. Maybe Biden wasn't as dismissive to Bernie and progressives as Queen Hillary was. But if this is influencing him, you're doing a bad job. Straight up, you're doing a bad job. And, what particularly, the phrasing in that story that particularly unsettles me a little bit too, obviously this is just CNN's framing, but when he says Bernie's helping to keep the progressive flock in check, I'm certainly not making any excuses for what I'm starting to call the surrender squad. But, Bernie is a reason a lot of the squad got into politics. They deeply respect Bernie and admire Bernie. Obviously, they talk. So if Bernie, whatever you want to call it, is naive enough to think he has influence, or as some of you in the chat are saying, maybe he's just tired, which I've gotten that description from some in his world. Well, if he's trying to keep, I don't want to say keep the squad in line, but sell the squad on, no, we could work with him, think the long game. That might be part of why, AOC, who said, let's bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party, and Rashida Tlaib, who's clearly a fighter, Ilhan Omar, same thing. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, who I've covered when she was an activist. She's a fighter. I'm not making excuses for them because I think it's inexcusable how they've folded like a cheap tent and put up zero fight. Don't even threaten to withhold their vote. Jamal Bowman just kind of alluded to possibly withholding his vote from a police reform bill if qualified immunity is not it. Didn't go as far to say, I'm not voting for it. And it's really, for me, as somebody who's, early days of in the field reporting, we're covering Bernie's campaign in 2016. The special movement that was born from that, the euphoria that was in the air at those rallies, the babies I saw with Bernie gear, older progressives who were just waiting for decades for somebody like Bernie to reinvigorate them, new people that were never involved with politics who came in. It's sad to see what he's become. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, he's sold out or he's corrupt. I think he's just tired. And he thinks at this point, I think he's bought into, I'd rather get something incremental than fight for much bigger, which is kind of the antithesis to his whole philosophy. Because this influence that he has, all he's getting is, if incremental is a generous term. I don't even think he's getting much incrementally.